Yes, perfect. Next group, our panel discussion with Agtech and Workforce Development with a whole list of esteemed professionals in the field who are doing great things in academia, industry, primarily, some public agency affiliations. Nice to see you all. Clint, Walt, Ethan, Darryl, and Becca. The floor is yours. Turn those, yeah.
All right, there we go. So the esteemed group is this group here. I'm not a part of that esteemed group here. So really quickly, my name's Clint Cowden. I'm the Dean of CTE Workforce Development, Hartnell College. So for those that are not from the region, Hartnell, we're a small community college over in Salinas and service the Salinas Valley. And we've been really excited about this whole space of mechatronics, robotics, automation for the last 6-7 years, really looking at how we can create that workforce as we move into the future, especially students. We're not as much gonna design it from scratch. I know some of you guys wanna create those high-level engineers. We tend to be focused on students that are gonna take those products and really move with them and to keep them moving. And then for the students that do transfer on to great new programs like the mechatronics program here at CSUMB, we want them to also transfer here to those programs as well. But at the beginning, instead of me trying to slaughter you guys' bios, what I'm just gonna ask each of you to do, please go through, give us a 3 to 5 minute, who are you, really what are you guys doing in this space, and kind of what makes you excited about Agtech? Walt, we'll start with you.
Okay.
How about now? Nice. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Clint. My name's Walt Duflock. I'm the innovation guy at Western Growers. Our membership is over 2,000 of the world's best fruit, vegetable, and nuts growers, many of them in California with growing operations in multiple states and some globally. My background is 5th-generation family farm in South Monterey County, down in San Ardo. We do grapes, cattle, and greens. And then I left, actually. I went to Silicon Valley, did a bunch of non-Agtech startups. eBay is the one you've heard of. A couple others got acquired. And that turned out to be a nice combination of activities when Agtech came calling. So for the last about 8 to 9 years, I built the Thrive Accelerator to help startups out. And at Western Growers, I focus on the innovation team activities, 3 portfolios. The portfolio of labor and automation, optimizing that for our members, the portfolio of chemistry and biology, and then the portfolio of the big topic today, the workforce, right? So we need more Agtech-enabled workers in the fields now. We need more Agtech-enabled workers to help Ethan build all the cool robots. And it can't happen fast enough, because when we get the robots built out, we're gonna have a whole new set of software tools and data tools we can build. We're gonna need some folks for that.
Ethan?
Hello, testing. Hello, testing. Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Ethan Rublee, founder and CEO of a company here in Watsonville called FarmNG, Farm Next Generation, or farming without the I. And so my background, I'm maybe a 5th-generation inventor, entrepreneur, turned farmer, 1st-generation farmer. So, yeah. So when I was going to school on the East Coast, I grew up in a rural county, and I wanted to be a farmer. But I started working on farms, picking peaches, strawberries, not very fast, not very well. Don't hire me for that. But I realized, man, I can't make a living. I can't have a family. I can't buy a piece of property if I'm a farmer. So I got into coding. There was no Python. There was no C++. There was no computers on the farm at that time. Now, I'm not going to farm my property until my kids can program the robot to do it, which is really cool. So anyways, I relocated here in 2019. FarmNG, we make an appropriate, what we call an appropriate student-sized robot, the Amiga. And so this is a low-cost robot for research, for education, and for farmers. We just produced 100 of these robots and have deployed 80 of them in the last 12 months. Everyone on this panel, almost, I'm not sure, maybe are customers. They have robots in their institutions, and yeah, so Becky counts. Okay, all right. So, and it's just been incredible to enable innovation in the space and really kind of lower the barrier for entry. And yeah, we have this vision that basically every farm will hire a kid out of high school or community college. You know, there will be a seasonal workforce of robot developers, and really excited to be a part of this journey and have so much support from this community. So, thank you.
Got the green light. There we go. We're learning. Look at us. So hi, everybody. I'm Darryl Wong. I'm the executive director at the UC Santa Cruz Center for Agroecology. If we're going to talk about histories here, I'll say that I am like a first-generation farmer, but from like probably an infinite generation of farmers. So my family came from southern China, right? Those folks that stayed in China were doing ag, continue to do ag. My father and my mother actually got into coding early. So my dad helped to build the computer systems for like the Bank of America ATM software. And they were all very confused when I wanted to go back into ag. But I think that's why we're here today, to think about, you know, what does the next generation look like and why should they be excited about this? So for folks that don't know the UC Santa Cruz Center for Agroecology, you know, we are almost as old as a campus. We'll be celebrating 60 years in just a couple years, our 60th anniversary. And we've really been doing research and education in organic and sustainable ag for decades. And so what's really exciting right now, and one thing I want to, I think, talk about in terms of as it relates to our region is, you know, we're at this moment when the work that we've been doing in ag, but really outside of ag before organic and sustainable, I think, was really brought into the mainstream, is that we're now at this point where that is happening. That's both happening at the kind of state and federal level with USDA support, as well as statewide support. But it's also really happening in terms of a recent designation, which is our Ag Experiment Station designation. And this, it puts us into the Association of Public Land Grant Campuses across the country. Yeah, Clint gets it. So this is a lot of bureaucratic speak, but what it means is think about the resources and the impact that UC Davis, UC Berkeley, and UC Riverside have had on ag in the state, and we are now part of that. And I think what's really interesting to hear from the UC Division of Ag and Natural Resources, which really supports kind of that funding and what that means, they are really behind this effort to bring both us and UC Merced on as campuses, and the potential impact of having a top-tier research university in our region with our connection to the Pajaro Valley and Salinas Valley. Like, there are big things to come. And I think that, to echo what Daniel said, like, let's move slow, let's see how this develops, but what I'm really excited about is looking about the partnerships, right? So just as a point of reference, UC Santa Cruz is one of under 25 top-tier research universities in the country that is also a Hispanic-serving institution and an Asian American, Native American, and Pacific Islander serving institution, right? That is a big deal when we think about what the next generation workforce is gonna look like. So I think, for fear of going too much further, I'm gonna put out, I think, 3 things that feel exciting to me in terms of when I think about workforce development, and echo some of what Daniel had said. One is that I think, you know, in terms of our relative strength in working with small and mid-sized growers in our region and across the country, is that what really excites me about ag tech is really about humanizing the workforce, right? Making this work a lot easier, a lot more humane, so that farm workers and being a farmer is not an occupational hazard just because of the title, right? And that part is really important. I think Ethan's developments are really strong in that. The second is that I think the workforce of the future really needs to be interdisciplinary, right? These folks that when we talk about the translatable skills from the lab or from the algorithm into the field, we're gonna need people that can speak all of these languages, and we're gonna need to train them as such. And not only on the technical skills, but also as we think about what are the kind of political, economic, and social structures that determine what happens with technology and with producers in the fields, you know, folks are going to have to be able to navigate policy conversations, issues of equity and justice, as well as issues of algorithm and technology. And then the last thing that I'll say is that I think it's really important in our region. We talk a lot about workforce development, and I think it has this connotation of we have to give people the skills they need. And that is absolutely true. But one thing that I think that we have in our region in particular is the incredible assets of our students and our community in this incredibly rich agricultural region. And we need to be able to really uplift those assets and skills, because as everybody's talking about, the disconnection from the fields and the work is what makes a lot of this innovation not applicable. But we have an incredible workforce and incredible students that have their lived experience in the fields, in and around the fields, and I think they're the ones that are going to be able to create the new pathways of innovation. So I'm really excited about that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Becca Fenwick. I'm the director of the CITRIS Initiative for Drone Education and Research at UC Santa Cruz. And unlike everybody else, I have zero connection to ag before this. You know, I come from a background of marine geology and sort of research in the oceans for grad work, and then family background is my parents were teachers, and you know, that goes back a while. So I think for me, my experience of being a research scientist, doing natural lands management and integrating IT into that, bringing the tech outside is where I sort of come from in terms of now expanding that into agriculture. Our program at UCSC is sort of focused on supporting drones in all different aspects. So anything from research about drones, using drones, developing drones, to training the undergrads, grad students, and you know, people outside of the UC how to use drones. Training the trainers, building these workforce programs has been an amazing opportunity. We also are really, like Darryl said, focused on the diversity aspect, right? We look to the drone industry and sort of aviation as a whole, and just like tech, it's very white and male, and we want to change that from the beginning. It's a super early industry, it's right at its baby steps, so let's get those changes in and enable the workforce to be diverse from the beginning, which just continues that diversity. So if people coming in see themselves ahead, like in the people who are ahead of them, it makes it so much easier. So let's get that started. And it's been such a fantastic experience over the last 2 years working with our partners at Hartnell and Digital Nest and CSUMB to sort of bring these ideas together using drones in all sorts of different ways. So Agtech and marine science and, you know, monitoring, you know, road work that Caltrans is doing, and what do we do about inspections on power lines, and, you know, starting to talk about package delivery. Like, drones can be used for everything, and which is, I feel like every time I have a conversation about drones with somebody, they have a new idea of how they can be used, which is fantastic. And it's just been so interesting to see how it's been developing over the last 2 years and how it's going to continue to develop, and the innovations that are happening with FarmNG and other partners is amazing. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Well, thank you all, and I'm really excited, and I want to continue on with kind of this continuum of workforce development. And for those of you that don't know, the USDA has really looked at this region as really kind of a perfect scenario of how high school, community college, state universities, and now those land-grant universities can work together, and we've brought over $20 million in this next generation funding for really upskilling our region, and I'm so excited how you communicate about that. And so, Walt, one of those things, but within that, so we have this continuum where we're working, and I think a lot of our minds start at that, we're gonna start at middle school, and we're gonna go through this mechatronic program. But WGA's been working a lot with incumbent workers and how to upskill those incumbent people that are already right there in agriculture, out there doing that. And so can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing across kind of the western 7 states on how to upskill incumbent workers?
Yeah, absolutely, Clint. And it's been a great program. CDFA, California Department of Food and Ag, has been a great partner on this. We have a Next Gen Ag Worker program that now has some dollars behind it. So we've got $750K that turned into $900K this year, which is great. The program's going well. We got some extra money, and it's really doing a couple things. We go out to the scenic parts of California, right? Bakersfield, Imperial, Reedley, Modesto. Go ahead, laugh if you want. We love these spots. There are people, and that is where we can turn workforce into reality for these folks. So we go out, we do 4 events a year. Karen Ross comes with us, and we get the growers, the startups, and the students in the room for a day, right? A half a day on Friday to sit like this, and a half a day on Thursday, and then a half a day on Friday to go out in the fields and hear from the FFA clubs. And it's fantastic. So behind all that, we decided we needed to put some real targets in place. So with this grant, what we did is we said, we'll Agtech enable 3,000 students over 4 years. And the nice thing is, we identified the grower skills gaps. They told us exactly what they need. You will laugh. The #1 survey result from growers on where they need Agtech help, irrigation, right? It's not always robots and fancy tech and biologicals. Irrigation's where they need some help. We can help. So we identified the grower skills gaps. We identified the curriculum that was already there. We thought we'd have to build it. Fortunately, we were wrong. We identified the curriculum. We share it across all the community colleges. It turns out the community colleges, Clint will admit this, they're good about sharing inside the campus, not so great outside to other campuses. There are 118 community colleges, 35 to 40 of them are pretty ag friendly. So we've now got 18 community colleges in California teaching the curriculum that the growers identified and worked with us to ID, and we're gonna put 500 kids this semester through Agtech Ready curriculum, and the last mile then is getting them placed. So we have up to 100 scholarships worth $3,000 each to help encourage the growers to hire these kids after they go through the coursework. And I'm happy to announce that Rancho Cielo, a group that I'm on the board of out in the eastern foothills of Salinas, they will be the first organization, a nonprofit, to give certification status to their grads as early as the spring. And the only reason they beat Clint to it is because Clint's got a little more bureaucracy. The Rancho decision was 3 guys, and I was one of them in the room at the same time, and we could pull the trigger. But know that that same program, that certification of Agtech, is going to go statewide in the next 12 to 18 months, and we can't wait.
Excellent, excellent.
So if I could jump in here, I think, you know, we had a little bit of a pre-conversation about this panel, and I think what's so exciting to me about this moment, and to emphasize what I think Clint was saying, is that, you know, now more than ever, there's the opportunities for partnership across, especially these institutions of higher education. And I think to the same point, right, that Clint, you acknowledged, or Walt, maybe you said, is about the community colleges maybe sharing amongst themselves, but not getting out into the community. You know, the same thing is true across our, I think, UC to CSU to CC system. And I think with this money that Clint mentioned, I just want to emphasize, you know, this is $25 million to our region. This was 10% of the overall USDA award that was given for a one-time grant that came out last fall. Again, the program director says this was not intentional. They all had significant proposals that stood on their own, but I think we have 5 years to think about how do we work with CSUMB in really strong partnership to build these pathways so that those students, right, or workers, right, that are coming into some of these certificate programs, we need to create the pathways for them to follow their passion. Whether that is, if they might not see themselves as a coder or an engineer, we want to make sure that we pull off those folks and give them that opportunity, that if they want to come to Santa Cruz and work in our engineering department and work on ag tech, that they know there's an easy pathway to get there. And I think some of that bureaucracy that we have to deal with, right, is part of about bolting this to the mainframe too, right? Like there's significant dollars behind the California state education system. How do we make sure those pathways are really clear for our students in our communities that can come through it?
And talk a little bit about you guys' grant that you got from the Next Gen and how that's incorporated into CIDER, just a little bit more.
So I don't want to steal Darryl's thunder when he talks about the grant as a whole and how that all works, but the CIDER portion of it, because we do more than ag tech, you know, it's part of our integrated program, we are enabling to have more undergraduate students take part in our program. So our pilot training program, we have, last 2 years, we've had 20, 30 students come through our program. They study for 16 weeks, 8 weeks in the winter quarter, 8 weeks in the spring quarter. We train them how to take their Part 107, which is their commercial drone pilot's license exam. Last year, I think we had 98% of our students pass, which is fantastic. And then in the second quarter, we do hands-on field experience. So they have 3 different types of projects. last year it was doing a 3D scan of some object on the farm and sort of talking about what that is. Maybe that's a sculpture, maybe that's a tractor. Do a vegetation survey, so looking at, in this case, it was a field of strawberries, like what information can you tell from an aerial survey of that? And then doing a videography project. So they produced some really cool videos, which I think I've sent you. I should, if I haven't. Promo videos for the farm, and like a lot of our students, or some of our students, love the farm, they're working on it, and so this was a great passion project for them, and it really comes across in the material they presented. So this year, we're able to expand that to almost 40 students, half of which will be ag-focused specifically, and so the first quarter will be the same, and then the second quarter, the ag-focused students will have more ag-focused projects, but you know, they're integrated with the other students as well, and we're hoping to integrate some Hartnell students into that experience as well. Oh, and then I guess the other piece is that we've got a brand new program that we'll be offering in the summer, which will be a 2-week boot camp. The students will stay on the farm, and then we'll do more in-depth technical work on how to use drones and automation in an ag setting and give them the hands-on experience for that.
So Becca's program is one of the programs funded. And again, for folks that don't know the Next Gen program, this was about really empowering the next generation of ag leaders and learners, specifically from historically underrepresented backgrounds in agriculture, right? At least in the field. So Becca's one program, but I think just to kind of take it to a broader UC Santa Cruz perspective, you know, what our job is to really think about all the different activities that we do at UC Santa Cruz, knowing that we don't have an ag school, right? But that, you know, we are housed in the Division of Social Sciences, but there's lots of intersections, again, speaking about this interdisciplinarity, and really supporting our students in that. And I think what I want to emphasize is what we know specifically about working with, again, non-traditional students or first-generation students is that this is not just about getting them in the door. This is actually about changing the entire programming, not only from how you deliver it, making sure that there's hands-on outdoor experiential opportunities for them, but also how do you support them in the wraparound services when they might be thinking about, can I continue to be in college, right? And so I think I want to talk about a couple innovations and then tell a quick story. So one innovation in the grant that we're really excited about is that we are jointly funding a position, not at the Center for Agroecology in a research unit, but in the Division of Student Affairs and Success. So this was really intentional to make sure that those folks and those skills within the student services unit is actually working on funneling folks into the agroecology program and supporting them once they're there with kind of wraparound support services to make sure if they're thinking like, I want to do this, but I've got issues at home, or I want to do this, but I have issues with figuring out my books or tuition, that there's somebody there to support them specifically on the agricultural side. And I think that type of wraparound service is really important. And this quick story I want to tell, because I think, you know, again, we can be up here and talk about all these ideas and we can make it sound nice, I think, as Daniel kind of alluded to. But what does it actually mean? And I think we have an example of somebody, because while this grant program was just awarded this in late spring, early summer, you know, we've been doing this work for a number of years, and this grant is going to allow us to really supersize the work. So what it looks like is that I want to talk about one student, Mauricio Chavez. He went to Alasal High School in Salinas. His mom grows strawberries, and he decided to choose UC Santa Cruz because of its focus on sustainability and because of some USDA-funded recruitment programs that we did actually in Salinas. And he said, you know, at Alasal High, he's like, Cal Poly was there, UC Davis was there, but Santa Cruz wasn't there. But it happened that he did one of these programs. He chose us for sustainability. In his first year, he joined Becca's drone training program, completed that. He also started working with the FarmNG robot through the challenge?
Farm Robotics.
The Farm Robotics Challenge. So he was actually working on building an algorithm that used off-the-shelf cameras to allow these robots to follow the plant line. Again, Daniel talked about curves in the fields, but specifically thinking about the needs of small organic producers where weed management is the #1 problem. And so how do you create some autonomous navigation to help more smooth, basically weeding and more effective weeding? Just this past summer, he just completed, thinking about the interdisciplinarity, 10 semi-structured interviews with growers that are in the ALBA program in Salinas. So for folks that don't know, this is a farm worker to farm owner training program, thinking about barriers to adoption for this technology and what are some of their issues. So Mauricio is just starting his second year, and this is the type of, I think, Our job is to map these programs and assist our students in getting access to them and understand those supports. And what has this meant is like, you know, again, our faculty director is at the USDA this week in Washington, D.C., presenting about with the national group of Next Gen programs. And because the Deputy Undersecretary, Sana Beg, came out and visited and heard from Mauricio, Stacey reported to me that Sana, who is the Deputy Undersecretary, this is $4 billion in her department of Education, Research, and Economics, right? They control NEFA. But she was really highlighting Mauricio as a student to all of these other leaders of the Next Gen programs nationwide because of what it represents, that potential, right? This is, again, thinking about the assets that Mauricio brings, how he's able to translate across algorithm into the field, into these interviews, you know, in fluent Spanish, right? This is the type of workforce that we're gonna need as we move forward.
Exactly, and Ethan, I'm coming right at you here for it, because I have that same type of story, and that's exactly what we looked at. We looked at, when we were at Hartnell, looking at where is that DEI lens. So when we look at a lot of our students, the students that come through, they get a great education, they've taken differential equations, they've done those kinds of things, and we see them underemployed. What are those sections, and what are they missing? And when we start to ask them and talk to them, we start to find out that they haven't had those internships, they haven't had those types of opportunities, so that as they're moving through, when they're sitting there at that job interview and someone's asking them, but have you actually done that outside of class? They don't have the answer yes. And so exactly looking at that, wrapping around that, we wrote our grant, getting and working with Imperial Valley College, University of Arizona at Yuma, and CSUMB, so that the students, when they get here, have $30,000 scholarships, that ability to be life-changing amounts so they can come, but then also working with industry to make sure that they have these points. So working with Western Growers and the Grower Shipper Association to do those internships, but then also working with great companies like FarmNG. And so we had the exact same experience this summer. We had a student we had multiple students, but the student that is in my mind, she's looking at and wanting and trying to make the choice between mechanical engineering and ag engineering. And she was able to come do an internship with FarmNG. She was able to truly get her hands and be in that type of entrepreneurial environment. And so, you know, Ethan, if you'll talk a little bit about the types of, I know you guys have some grants that you're working with internships and doing that. If you'll talk a little bit about that and why kind of FarmNG is really leaning into things like the Farm Robotics Challenge and working with this younger generation.
Yeah, so we had 3 interns, amazing interns from Hartnell this summer, and one intern from UC Santa Cruz that had participated in this challenge, and another amazing student from UC Merced. That was all basically funded through, I don't exactly know all of the sources of money, but somehow we had like all this amazing talent for free, and all we had to do was like basically have a housing stipend, and I think we couldn't help ourselves but also try to figure out how to continue employing these kids. That they're like, no, you got to go back to school and finish school, but the startup thing is like, no, come back and yeah, who needs school? So I think that, but I was just so blown away by like, I mean, we have amazing mentors on our team, and we have most of our team here in Watsonville is actually, you know, grew up in this area, right, and have stayed in the community, and are the most creative people I've ever worked with, and also other people like Nathan Dorn, who's in the audience. We gave these students, we gave them a lot of authority, right, to go out and work on the projects that would have an impact, that were meaningful to our product, but also meaningful for the farmers that they were already connected with, and just enabled them and let them make mistakes. And there were tears, and there were late nights, and there was probably some blood, I'm sure. So But we don't have a lot of bureaucracy, and anyways, it was incredible that was just so inspiring, and same types of experience happened when one of the reasons why we wanted to lean into the challenge was we know these land-grant universities, these research stations, like the way that innovation really gets adopted on the farm, right? Farmers, at whatever side of the political spectrum you are very conservative when it comes to changing practices, right? It's just because, well, for good reason, we don't want to starve. So, there's also examples of disruption happening and communities collapsing, from kind of the rapid change in adoption of practices, and it can be, everything's always changing, but the point I'm trying to make is we knew from a company perspective, we're trying to reinvent agricultural workflows and best practices from first principles, starting with electric motors, AI, and robotics, right? It's like we're kind of, imagine like John Deere, right? And if he had a battery and electric motor, and what would the tractor, if you look at all these old videos of basically people figuring out how to use the diesel engine to replace horses, there was a lot of creativity that happened back then, right? And it's a mistake to think that like we should not go through that kind of Cambrian explosion of innovation. And so, with the technology that is now so prevalent, almost everyone on Earth can afford a cell phone and can afford access to the internet, which is incredible, and that wasn't true even 10 years ago. But for this to really happen, those research institutions and academic institutions, that's where the funding is right now. That's where the risks are taking place, and that's all the ecologists, all the plant scientists, all these bright people that have been working essentially on breeding and adaptation of crops and doing the fundamental research. Those are all farmers, and they can't get anyone in ag tech to pay attention to them. Right? They can't get anyone that's working on AI to even care about segmenting a plant because that's a solved problem. Like who cares? And so they're all teaching themselves how to train neural networks, how to collect data, and how to like apply that and kind of go have another step function in terms of complexity of these systems. And so I kind of really view it as we need to push our products to the research stations, and then there will be the extension, right? And I know that these, and having the workforce and having the community colleges and those extension agents, and that's more than just like government-funded extension. This is groups like Western Growers, and these are startups. I think of those as extension, into the ecosystem. And this will take years, but as those extension efforts really start to proliferate and figure out how to use these technologies and develop the skills on the farm, then it will be ready for essentially mass adoption. But this is, the USDA has lots of experiences of essentially this kind of, our whole food system is based on that cycle, and it's a mistake to ignore that cycle in the coming ag tech revolution. So anyways, that's why we're leaning into the robotics challenge, because now I think we have robots at like 30% of the land grant universities in the country, so.
And Walt, I saw you were leaning in on a question there, and I cut you off.
No, it didn't cut me off at all. I just wanted to pile on. I think we're building great programs. We have great amounts of capital. We're getting a disproportionate share almost of capital, and I think we're getting great support. I would just say our learning at Western Growers from the 10 Agtech X events we've done at the community colleges and from the couple events we've launched in the last couple of years and the support for the Farm Robotics Challenge, everyone needs to remember in the ag ecosystem, we are recruiting. We need to recruit hard. We've got kids that don't think of us as first choice or second, right? My experience is two of the best things you can do to get those kids engaged and get them back into this ecosystem, get them into the Farm Robotics Challenge, get them on a team, get them working with a team. The teams we saw that were there, the teams we saw that won and competed, the teams we saw that came to Salinas for FIRA, those teams were engaged with ag like we all want them to be. So the Farm Robotics Challenge is coming back bigger and better this year. It's now launched. It's a full year. Get the kids engaged in Farm Robotics Challenge. It's available for all. Cost of entry is low, and it'll be great. Second one is send them to the shows. So we ran a test against my team's advice. I said, what happens if we just throw 300 kids at FIRA USA in the rodeo grounds for a day in Salinas? And they're like, well, that would be terrible. We'd have all kinds of chaos. And I said, yeah, but it'll be okay. So we brought 14 schools worth of students, high schools and Rancho Cielo, to the rodeo grounds among 2,000 people at Salinas in July, and it was fantastic. They got a chance to talk to guys like Ethan. He doesn't look that charismatic, but put him in front of a robot, he's fantastic. So we had kids talking to robots, watching panels, getting engaged. The stories I've heard from the teachers and the students afterwards, because I'm lucky enough to know a couple of them, it's fantastic. So get them engaged in the Robot Challenge, get them to come to the events. I'll give a plug for FIRA 24, it's up in Davis. I'll give a bigger plug for FIRA 25, coming back to Salinas. And we have the Food Safety Summit locally, get them to come to that. It's more exciting than it sounds. And we have the Salinas Biological Summit next June. Get them to an event, we can help. It'll be a great first step in helping to recruit them because all the capital and all the programs only work when the kids show up.
And I might just jump in and say, I mean, Josh opened the symposium today saying like, some of the best outcomes of this conference were all the panelists talking together. Our students are the same way. And this is what we know from our recruitment and retention programming is like, I can stand up there and try to tell a student that they should come to UC Santa Cruz, but Mauricio is gonna do 10 times the job that I would do. So if we can bring these students to these conferences and have students from across our sectors engage in meaningful engagements, I think that's a way to keep really reinforcing that pipeline and making sure that it's real for them, right? Because we can put out the pamphlet and we can talk about the 2+2 agreements, but like it's not till they talk to their buddy that they know from their auntie that they went to school with, it's like, you can trust this place, right? That's what it's gonna take.
I do want to have an anecdotal story. So one of the first challenge teams that we started working with was Darryl's team, and these were, I remember kind of coming there with the robot, and we were trying to figure it out, like kind of dog food it with the home team, figure out if we could even support the challenge with students, and so we were all meeting on the farm. I mean, I moved here because of your farm at UC Santa Cruz, but there were these 3 students from the engineering department that didn't even know there was a farm on campus. They didn't even know that ag robotics or agriculture was an interesting application for engineering. And they're coming and they start working with it, and then I remember we were sitting at this picnic table, sunset, ocean view, 20 acres of beautiful vegetables, and there's 3 students and they have laptops out and they start making the robot do something with their keyboard, and they started like squealing, and it was like, oh, this is where it's at. And then a couple months later checked in and they're all having debates about the impact and where they're going to go next to kind of continue and be engaged in agriculture. And this is, and we've seen that across the board. And we have people changing their PhD theses to work on agriculture robotics from this experience. So, and then the high schoolers, yeah, there's no reason they can't do it, so.
Yeah, I think I would just agree, allowing students to have these experiences is transformative. We see this year after year. The students come into our drone pilot training program because they're like, oh yeah, drones, yeah, they're fun, whatever. I got one from Costco. Let's see where this goes. It's transformative. I think 2 of the most interesting comments I got at the end of this last year were 2 of the female students we had. One came up to me and she's like, I'm no longer scared of maps. And I was like, you were scared of maps to start with? But like just having that experience of like making a map and using them and understanding them, like that was huge for her. And she had actually been on her high school robotics team, but had had such a bad experience that she'd pulled out of engineering entirely. And she's like, I wish I'd taken this class 2 years ago, because I'm graduating, and I would have switched back to doing engineering, and now she's looking for ways to get back into it after graduation. And we see that over and over again with the students. And then they talk to their friends, right? And then they come back, their friends come the next year, and it's just been absolutely incredible to see that transformation happen.
And one thing, if I can add on again, that I think is important about these experiences, those team of engineers, right? Oliver, Josh, and Kat, right? I think they felt so inspired by applying all of their schooling into this real world space that really felt so human to them, right? To be around the birds and the trees and the sunsets and to eat the food coming out of the fields. Like, this is a very human experience, agriculture is, like, basic to all of us. And I think that's great to see those folks shift. What I also want to emphasize is that I think pedagogically, as we think about how we structure our programs, coming back to this assets framework, is that I really think that it's important to think about, what is the difference between giving somebody a drone that has never seen it before, that has never seen agriculture before, and giving it to somebody that actually has a history of working in the fields or has seen their father work in the fields, right? Like, those two different students are gonna think about ag very, very differently and what the possibilities are. And I think making sure that we keep bringing that to the table in the workforce is really what's gonna make folks feel like, wow, like, I am needed in this field that there's a ton of investment in, like, let's go.
Yeah, we see that in the conversations we've been having with Alba and with Hartnell, is like finding those people who already have that experience, already have that expertise, and giving them new tools and new ways to engage. Maybe they are getting older and, like me, have arthritis and don't want to necessarily be working in the fields as hard as they have been. This is a way they can still contribute and bring their expertise and have it be incredibly useful. Because you look at a photo of a field, and if you don't know what you're looking at, it's pretty. But, getting that information out of, like, what the plants look like, is this disease, do we need more water over here? You need a background to understand the image that you're looking at, and that's an invaluable skill.
And I want to continue on with this. And I'm going to tell a story too. I'm horrible. I love to tell stories, but same situation. I was working at a different community college. It was in the Central Valley, not near as gorgeous as here. And a TopCon was just getting into ag tech. And so they sent all of their engineers out to our college. And my community college students got to spend time with them. And it was hilarious because the engineers were wanting to do things that my students were like, no, you don't do that in agriculture. Please don't do that. You're going to tear things up. And I think this creating these environments where we truly can cause this intersection of populations that may not normally walk around and talk with one another is so important. And then the other segment that I think we also touched on here is this concept that ag tech is really about bringing more people into agriculture and doing those types of things. And so, Walt, with that, we were over here talking a little bit earlier today about how ag tech is making jobs better and bringing more people into the space. Kind of from your spectrum, will you talk a little bit about what WGA is doing in that space?
Yeah, no, happy to. And I think, when you look at this ag tech workforce, part of the challenge is again, getting folks recruited, getting them active. And we're excited about the 2-year stuff. We're also excited about the 4-year stuff. And when you talk to Dean Thulin, newly retiring at Cal Poly, sad day. But you talk to the folks from Fresno State and all the places and CSUMB, one of the challenges is how do we define the 2-year and the 4-year? And so we're starting to work on some of that definitional stuff as well. I love the 4-year program that Bakersfield has, where a 2-year program at college at City becomes a 4-year program with Bakersfield on the back end. I love the CS&3 type of initiative. I think those are all right. And the way Dean Doolin and I talk about it is the 2-year community college environment can produce skilled workers. And it's up to the 4-year to wrap around the ability to create the Ethans of the world, to create the startup founders, right? And create the company founders, create the innovators. And so we're trying to climb upstream a little bit more to work with the four-year institutions. So we're working with the Strawberry Commission and Strawberry Center on some of their automation stuff. And what's super interesting about that is, A, the commission's behind it 100%, which is great. So the commission and industry fund the Strawberry Center to run some innovation tests and define technology. They're really kind of a scouting and exercise and a vetting exercise all in one. And it's funny, they weren't sure where the biggest help was going to come for the strawberry industry. It's not actually what they thought. They thought vetting the startups and seeing who is doing what would be useful, and it is. They thought that maybe even creating some technology might be useful. Not at this point. The most useful thing that Cal Poly and the Strawberry Center have done for the strawberry industry is that last mile. It's once you buy the machine, making sure it integrates into the operation. You would think that's on the operator to do. It is not. It's everybody. It's the startup, it's the operator, and it's, in this case, the Strawberry Center. That has been a huge effort. So we shared that at FIRA. We want to get that wider. We think there's an opportunity for veg and other fruits to do the same thing. So that notion of industry, working with universities that are aligned to get good stuff out of it and get that last mile, that's how we avoid the equipment graveyards that we have all over this valley and the San Joaquin Valley, right? Get that integration to work.
All right, and now last question for the group. I'm going to start over with Becca, and I'm thinking last question. No? Okay.
That's good, but we have this Slido thing, and it's not really working, but we do have an audience question that was about something you talked about in the beginning that I thought might be worth talking about again, which is
Please.
the topic of the incumbent workers. How is that being addressed? I think that was brought up, maybe Walt, you were talking about some of that. Is that something you might be able to touch on in your final minutes?
So I'm going to start with what we're doing at Hartnell. That was our number one starting point. When we looked at Agtech and automation and all of those things, how do we make sure that we're training the people that are currently in those jobs right now? Because that's what we heard from industry. It wasn't my great idea, right? This was industry coming to us saying, hey, you know what? As these skills are changing, we need to make sure that the people that understand the culture of agriculture are getting these upskills. So we started with our non-credit, which we're able to offer in Spanish, and we're able to do those types of things. And then we integrated it over into more of a university transferable. Well, how about with WGA?
No, so our programs are built for everybody. They're built for the 18, 19-year-old coming into Rancho Cielo, coming into Hartnell, coming into wherever. And farm workers, the number one challenge there is we just need to make them aware of a couple things. First of all, community colleges are free. Second of all, we have great programs that can create skills for you to get better paying jobs. So we are definitely working on upskilling them. And I will share one experience that we've had in Washington. We've got great partners with the Washington Tree Fruit Research Commission, and they are engaging farm workers in new and innovative ways. So there is a harness for fruit picking that has been developed by a farm worker, and Western Growers is working with a nonprofit that did the challenge up there. We are going to commercialize this product for them. I can't wait to tell this story when it's told all the way out. It's told well now because the farm worker got $1,000, some recognition, and some media coverage for their efforts. But imagine when we bring this down to California and help the farm workers not just upskill through Rancho and Hartnell, but if you've got some innovation, let's give them some labs, let's give them some Saturdays, let's give them some time to actually create some of this stuff. The harness is really cool, and when the judges were picking the winner, one of the judges was a grower, and our first order's been placed. She said, I'd like 550 of them. And the poor nonprofit had been working with me, and I said, look, you think it's the finish line when this award happens, it's the start line. So we're at the start line of a journey that'll take us through a couple months, but this is the kind of thing we want to do more of, right? Let's get these guys innovating, let's get them upskilling, let's get them into the workforce, because we're going to have thousands of robots in ag over the next couple years. We're all going to need a lot of people to build them, design them, sell them, maintain them, and work with them. Because remember, between Salinas and Paso Robles, there's 90 miles of 101. My ranch is in the middle of that. If something goes down and a crew is working, it's got to get fixed quick. We need kids that can solve problems on the fly. And again, it's cross-disciplinary like you've heard, and it's badly needed, because if that guy's coming from Salinas 60 miles away, what's that crew doing while that guy's driving?
And Becca, I know that you did a training for Hartnell that we had over 25 incumbent workers, people from industry. Talk about how you're working with incumbent workers.
Yeah, so part of our workforce training program, which is funded by the James Irvine Foundation, is partnering with Hartnell and sort of looking at where those gaps are, what are the trainings that are needed, and helping Hartnell develop the training programs moving forward, which is fantastic. It was really fun. Yeah.
Okay, so now my last one of the big things we want to walk away from here, and for any students or administrators, we're going to write down these things here. I don't have the answers. You guys have the answer. And then the big question is, what are the key skill sets needed to support widespread adoption of Agtech? Walt?
Engineering, hardware, software. That's the plastics of this generation.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. I think it's systems engineering is really important, and this connection, basically the connection to the actual processes, the business processes on the farm, yeah. But I think the skill sets are already there, is what I've experienced. I mean, just to tie it back to the first question. I think the incumbents that we're seeing on our staff, right? They were trained up on hydraulics and have been doing diesel mechanics and CNC kind of operation. Those skills directly transfer to the next generation of technology, and the software. But software development is so important. So and all of our mechanical engineers, all of our diesel mechanics are starting to learn how to code the robots. So I think coding and systems engineering and the willingness to just go weld it if you need to fix it is like super important.
So I'll tell another little story. So I had my own farm for a number of years, just a small 8-acre diversified, sold to high-end restaurants in San Francisco, and then managed the campus farm for a number of years, so about 15 years of farming in my background, before going back and getting my PhD at UC Santa Cruz while I was working at the same time. And what I like to say is that in my work, working with both growers and researchers in these collaboratives, you know, the growers don't care about a 95% confidence interval and replicated plot designs that the academics will need for their own advancement. And so I'm gonna come back to what I think is what I said earlier, which is like, we need translation abilities in this workforce when we talk about adoption, because similar to the way that, again, students are gonna be the best ones to recruit future students, it's the same thing with growers. And that if we actually are able to, I think, translate that language from what is happening in the tech into how is it meaningful for the growers, those growers are the ones that as soon as we get successes on growers that have a reputation in the community, like we know that's the flashpoint for innovation. And that's how we've seen research adoption of research that's come out of UC Santa Cruz happen, is you need to work with those growers and be able to speak with them in their language. And so I think that I'm gonna say translation in terms of that interdisciplinary aspect, I think is gonna be really key.
Yeah, I think I would second that and add in sort of general digital literacy, right? So maybe you don't need to code, but you need to be able to use a tablet and, you know that the best way to fix things is to turn them off and on again and off and on again infinitely, and then eventually they will work. You know, that's something that you learn by using technology and turning it off and turning it on. I mean, I think that's one of the pieces that we see is like, you know, do the incumbent workers, do the students, do they have that basic digital literacy more than just opening a Word document, but like using the technology is really key.
Excellent, and I'm getting the, hey, you guys are done? Oh, no, one more question.
I've got one more question. I know there's a lot here, and our Slido thing hasn't been working that great, so we'll try to get that going for the next one. But I thought this was relevant it's specifically relevant to the Farm Robotics Challenge. And how do schools engage in the Farm Robotics Challenge? I think this is referring to K-12 or that range? And what role can industry play to enable the challenge to be a win for ag? 2 questions.
So K through 12, we haven't quite figured out, although I know that 5th, 4th graders get really excited when you bring a robot to the school. Yeah. And they definitely like to ride on it and control it, and so there's some safety issues. So, yeah. Yeah, 4th grader on a diesel tractor. Yeah, it's definitely safer than a diesel tractor. So, no, I think for the farmer, the way that we've seen the schools engage, the most successful schools engage is when they have a farm use case or a farm on campus or a farm in their local region, a farmer problem that they're working with, and where it's an integrated project where you have engineering students working on it, you have a farmer giving input, and you have like basically daily iteration on the farm. And FarmNG has really set up essentially the infrastructure, all of the resources, and we learned a lot from last year doing this, where we have a public forum on the internet where the students can ask questions. We have regular YouTube content coming, to basically work through the challenges and show how we actually work on it internally at FarmNG. We've also host office hours with the students, so we just have like an open, Zoom basically that students can log into and ask their questions and work through their problems with the engineers. And so making sure that we provide that level of support to the students really helped them, understand, because there's a lot to learn too. It's like from the technology side, a lot of the students didn't even understand all of the capabilities that they had access to, and we've incorporated now all of the best or the most common problems that the students have. We've reincorporated those into the platform in terms of, GPS guidance. Everyone wanted GPS guidance. We haven't figured out quite yet how to incorporate the computer vision guidance, so that's still a challenge that the students are solving. But I think, so that's how we've seen them engage. I think there's a question of how do you get access to the capital to purchase the equipment, but what we've seen is that this is really an investment that an individual professor or a group, as they make that, this is a multi-year device that they can build content and leverage for many other activities. And we're working on raising grants from industry and philanthropic groups to support colleges that don't yet have the budget. And then we also work with a lot of the professors are actually applying for grants, and we'll provide letters of support for them to get the budget. And we've been working with groups like the USDA, who might have already a relationship with the group inside of the university that wants to implement it. And so there are opportunities for funding, and there are great groups like DART that are also helping. So thank you. Great.
And I'll be over at the table. Come over and talk to me. If you're in high school, middle school, or community college, we can discuss your strong workforce funds, how we can incorporate that. Also, Hartnell, we have a 4-year grant where we'll be doing 40 high school, middle school instructors, upskilling them on mechatronics, and then hopefully getting them right in line to jump in that challenge.
Yeah, I was going to say what I said of Fira. We'll figure it out, kids. If you've got some kids, find us. We've got a FarmNG machine at the AllSouth campus at Hartnell right now. I know the guy that's got the keys. So if you've got kids that want to engage, we want them.
All right. Perfect, Daniel. Thank you. Excellent panel. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Becca. Okay. That was great. Thank you. Yeah, very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. in this panel, I love the conversation about collaboration across sectors, well represented here. Without a government agent here, the supportive funding from the USDA came in as critical. I think what's happening here with the Agtech in our region, and this is not just starting, it's a product of many years of work, strategic alignment, is actually a great illustrative example of what could be developed around our newer technology in the region, around the advanced air mobility topic, and as well with our DoD partners who are also here with us. It's, again, there's often a question I get asked, and I ask myself, why are we bringing all these different sectors together? Who would put aviation and agriculture in the same conference? Well, it's not that common, but here at DART, where we're talking about air mobility, agriculture, security, energy, and what's our last one? Public safety. We talk about this because of that kind of rich outcomes that can happen from these kind of irregular collisions, and just in a couple of the interactions I've had today, that's been fruitful. So I'm encouraged to maintain that as much as we can. One thing I would like to acknowledge, because in more than one place, a member of our audience, Teresa Matsui's influence and her family's influence has come up. The CS3 program that was represented here was originally funded by the Matsui family and has been instrumental in establishing a model for how the community colleges and the university can work together. And Teresa's work on the seat on the Irvine Foundation Board has also been instrumental. All of us here, most of us, have been touched by that strategic body of investment that they're making. So, Teresa, thank you for what you're doing for the region. And really this